9,000 years ago, someone sat down, opened their mouth, and let another person drill straight into a living tooth. No metal, no anesthesia, no sterile room. And they survived it, not once, in some cases, twice. This isn't a guess or a myth pieced together from old bones. It's a confirmed, deliberate medical procedure, and it's rewriting how far back the history of dentistry actually goes. Most people assume dentistry is a modern invention, something that shows up alongside anesthesia, x-rays, and metal tools. Before that, the assumption is simple: teeth just rotted, and people either suffered or lost them. But that's not what the evidence shows. Thousands of years before anyone could write a single word, someone had already figured out how to treat a rotting tooth instead of just enduring it. The proof comes from Mehrgarh, a Neolithic farming village in present-day Balochistan, Pakistan. Anthropologists examined 300 skeletons dating between 7,000 and 5,500 BCE and found something unexpected: 11 drilled molars and premolars spread across 9 different adults. A 2006 study published in the journal Nature confirmed these holes weren't accidents, weren't decay, and weren't natural wear. They were deliberate. David Freyer, the anthropologist who led the study, pointed out something even stranger than the drilling itself. This wasn't a one-time fluke. The practice continued at this site for roughly 1,500 years. Someone taught someone else how to do this, generation after generation. So why did this start here, and why then? The answer comes down to what these people had just started eating. Mehrgarh sits at the edge of one of the earliest farming revolutions on Earth. As its people shifted from hunting and gathering to grinding grain between stone slabs, tiny mineral particles from the stone itself worked their way into the food. Every meal was quietly sanding down their teeth. That constant abrasion wore through the hard enamel and exposed the softer dentin underneath, the layer packed with nerve endings. Exposed dentin decays faster and hurts more. In other words, farming, the thing that let this civilization thrive, was also slowly wrecking their teeth. And drilling was the fix someone eventually reached for. There were no dental tools in the modern sense. Instead, these early practitioners repurposed technology bead makers were already using: a bow drill, a curved stick with a leather cord wrapped around a wooden shaft, tipped with a sharpened flint point. The same site is full of tiny drilled beads made from turquoise, lapis lazuli, and carnelian, stones people were already boring precise holes into for jewelry. Researchers believe the exact know-how that lets someone drill a hole in a gemstone without shattering it is what lets someone drill a hole in a tooth without destroying it. Spinning at around 20 rotations per second, slow by today's standards, but modern researchers who rebuilt these drills found they could bore through human enamel in under a minute. The holes weren't rough or accidental. They measured just over 1 millimeter to about 3 millimeters wide, and up to 3.5 millimeters deep. Under a microscope, the inside walls showed concentric ridges, the exact signature left behind by a rotating tool, and nothing else. This wasn't crude trial and error. It was controlled, repeatable, and precise enough to avoid destroying the tooth completely. Here's what rules out decoration or ceremony. Every single drilled tooth was a molar or premolar. Teeth buried at the back of the mouth, invisible to anyone else. Nobody drills a tooth nobody can see if the goal is to be seen. 4 of the holes sat directly next to visible decay, and the edges of the holes showed smoothing and healing, meaning these patients didn't just survive the procedure. They kept chewing on that same tooth afterward, for years. An open hole drilled into a live nerve doesn't just hurt during the procedure. It keeps hurting, and it invites infection. These early practitioners seem to have known that. Researchers found traces of bitumen, a natural tar, packed inside some of the cavities. Not decorative, a sealant, a barrier against exactly the kind of infection that would have killed the tooth, and possibly the patient, without it. For a window of time, this was a working medical system, a diagnosis, a tool, a procedure, and aftercare, developed independently thousands of years before writing existed. And then it vanished. By around 6,500 years ago, skeletons from a later cemetery at the exact same site show no drilled teeth at all. Here's how completely the knowledge disappeared. The next earliest known example of a drilled tooth anywhere on Earth doesn't show up again until roughly 3000 BC, in a Neolithic grave in Denmark. That's a gap of over 4,000 years, a working solution to a painful common problem, invented, refined into a tradition, and then lost so completely that a different civilization on a different continent had to invent it again from zero. So the next time you're lying back in a dental chair, listening to a drill spinning 20,000 times a second under a bright LED light, You're not experiencing something new. You're experiencing the return of a technique invented in a farming village in Pakistan 9 millennia ago, lost for thousands of years, and eventually rediscovered by people who had no idea it had already been done once before.